Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
We have a minute and a half. Trust me, folks, we will get this sooner or later. I'm not exactly normal, as we've been talking before we started the show. But anyway, welcome to the Full Spectrum Project. Tonight we have a very special guest, Butch Witkowski. And as I was doing a little bit of research on Butch, with UFOs, alien abductions, and things like that, I literally could not get away from this man. If you do any kind of research into ufology, Butch is like the number one person that you will find. So anyway, I am your host, Brian Clune. I am joined by my co-host.
How y'all doing? This is Pete Haviland. I'm glad that y'all are here this evening.
And we are also joined by Angie Mole, who will be doing our Weird World News segment at the top of the hour. Now, Butch, just before we get started, there was something that, and I know I've told Pete about this probably more than once, but when I was a little bit younger...
Angie, get the net.
And, you know, Pete, you're stop it. So my next door neighbor and I were actually driving along this one street, and no, we were not drunk, we were not high, although back then that was one of those things where maybe we would have been. But as we were driving along, we kind of looked up and we saw this. It was like a flying elongated brick, and it was just moving really slow, had a couple blinking lights on it, and all we heard was something that sounded like, I would say compressed air. Have you ever come across, in all of your research, something similar to that?
Yeah. Flying bricks, rectangles, some people call them. They're usually low in the sky. They're most times devoid of any color. They're usually, very dark gray or black. Mm-hmm. Some have lights, some don't. Some are very slow, some are very fast. There have been a number of pilot sightings over the years of those craft, predominantly in the southwest of the United States and the northwest of the United States. But they're not as common as a saucer or a triangle, but like I said, most people call them a flying rectangle. But there's a lot of sightings on those over the years, a lot.
All right. Well, I'm actually along the Pacific coast, just south of Los Angeles, and I've often wondered whether I was just like imagining things, seeing things. But it's nice to know that that is even though maybe not common, but something that does occur. So maybe I'm not as nuts as I thought I was.
Well, Brian, since you brought that up, back in '78 when we came here to Texas, I was out riding my bike, and for some reason I looked up and I saw what looked like something like it was cigar shaped over my house, and it was just kind of cruising along, no sound or anything. I thought it was a missile. I didn't know anything. I was like 12, 13. I didn't really look into any of that stuff, but it was just kind of cruising along. It had no smoke on the end, which I thought at the time that if something was flying, it had smoke on it, or at least you could see it was flying. But yeah, it was just like it was floating, and it wasn't a Goodyear blimp, because I used to see that out there a lot. But does that sound like anything, Butch?
Yeah, sounds like my first sighting.
Really?
I had my first sighting in 1989 while I was living in Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, okay.
And we were having some saguaro cactus planted in the yard, and a couple of guys from the university were doing that, and then my neighbor and a couple other folks. There were like 7 or 8 of us standing there. Uh-huh. And it was very hot. My wife went in to get iced tea, and she came on, and I got their iced tea, and I started drinking iced tea, and I looked up over a mountain, and it was my first sighting, and the description doesn't change. It was about 3 football fields in length, 6 or 7 stories high, hovering over a mountain, totally silent, burnt bronze in color, a couple really faint green lights along the side, maybe 3 or 4. And it was just hovering. And I'm looking at everybody else. They're all looking at it. I'm looking at it. The guy across the street's looking at it. He's the head of federal prisons for the United States government. My neighbor's looking at it. He's a doctor. And, you know, so there's like 8 people staring at this thing, and it just slowly went up and shot off west. I mean, like a bullet. It was just that quick. Wow. And so I got a little crazy and went down, and I went back into the house, and I called Tucson City Police Department, every media outlet I could think of, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, Phoenix Airport, Tucson Airport, State Police, Department of Public Safety, everybody I could think of, and nobody ever saw this thing. But we all saw it, and cigar shape is kind of like the flying brick and the saucer and the triangle. They're common. So, I mean, a lot of people over the years have come up with these drawings that they post on the internet where there's 67 varieties of craft. Well, nobody sees 67 varieties of craft. I mean, the most common is the triangle, the cigar shaped, or, the saucer or an orb. Those are the most common. So, or the flying brick or rectangle. But they're out there. I mean, we get reports every week.
Well, what do you think? What do you think they are? I mean, as far as are they a transport, or are they? I don't know. I mean, what do you think the use of it is? Well,
I mean, they could be a lot of things. I mean, people talk. Well, they see something large, they say, "Well, that's a mothership." Well, I don't know how they would know that. Or they're saying, they saw occupants in the windows. Well, this thing is at 30, 40,000 feet flying at, a couple thousand miles an hour. How did you figure that one out?
Right.
But what we can say definitively is, 1, there are things up there that do not belong to us. 2, we have no idea where they're coming from. 3, we have no idea if anybody's piloted them or they're mechanical. And 4, what the hell are they doing here?
Yeah, exactly.
And 5, they've been here forever.
Well, you were saying something about it being, at 30, 40,000 feet. The one I saw was no more than maybe 300 feet in the air and moving, I would say, no more than 15, 20 miles an hour.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. There have been ones where, people, the one that comes to mind real quick was people were at a picnic. Maybe a couple dozen people, family picnic, and they watched this thing come over a hump in the ground where they were at the park. It was like a little hump in the grass, and they just watched this thing come up over that, and it passed over top of them. They said 150, 200 feet max.
Yeah.
Totally silent. It was kind of a pale red in color. And then as it started to go out of sight, it just stopped and shot straight up.
We never did see what happened to the one we were looking at, but it was, I would say pitch black, and it had a couple little lights on it here and there. And like I said, it wasn't completely silent, but it did almost sound like it was being pushed along by compressed air. And that's one of the things that I will always remember because it was such a strange sound.
Yeah, no, I've never heard of that sound. I've heard of, kind of a whistling sound, buzzing sound, machinery type sound. But of course, nobody has a recording of it. And, everybody has everybody has a camera on their hip, but they never remember. And you gotta admit that, like, if you'd see something like that, the last thing on your mind would be to grab your phone.
Oh, of course.
Well, actually, back then, cell phones didn't really even exist yet. So
are we talking about like 2 tin cans and a string, or what? How old are you guys?
I remember those.
I'm 29.
Yeah.
So
I got socks that are older than you are.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm not gonna go where I was.
Don't let him lie to you. He's a lot older than he says he is.
I am 29. I just have anniversaries of my 29th birthday now.
Yeah.
So,
all
right. So,
29th anniversary of your 29th birthday.
Exactly. All right. So we kind of transgressed here, but so Butch, we'd like to get to know you a little bit. What was the first thing that got you interested in ufology, alien abduction, and mutilation, both animal and human?
Well, UFOs, it was that first sighting. And it really kind of upset me because, I saw it, other people saw it. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't drinking anything but iced tea. I know what I saw. And when I tried to see if anybody else saw it, my home set up on a mesa. So I looked down on Tucson. So everybody had to see this thing because the A Mountain sticks out like a sore thumb.
Right.
And when we moved back to Pennsylvania, I just kind of let it go. I just thought, enough's enough, because I had accumulated reams of paper, books, reports, and I had no affiliations with any UFO groups or anything like that. So I just dropped it. And then I came home from work one night, and there was a show on TV about UFOs, and the bug just bit me in the butt, and here we go. And that was 31 years ago. So I've been at this for 31 years. I've had 16 sightings on my own. I've never been alone when I've had my sightings. And I know there's stuff up there that is not ours. The field of ufology is, I know it's ripe with a lot of people that are looking for their fortune and glory, but there are also a lot of researchers out there that are good, do their job, do their due diligence, and they know what they're talking about. I'm in contact with researchers all over the world. Right now, one of my guys in Australia has got some really neat stuff he's sending me. But it just kind of stuck. Then I joined MUFON because I figured, I had to know more. As I became an investigator with them, then a state section director, then an original STAR team member and a chief investigator for the state of Pennsylvania. Well, that didn't work out. For whatever reason, I wasn't getting any further than I was when I started collecting paper and books. So I struck out on my own, started the UFO Research Center in Pennsylvania back in 2009, all like-minded researchers. I know these folks for a long, long time. A lot of them are, really famous folks. And we cover 14 states where we have investigators, and we have 2 investigators in Europe, one in Poland, and we have another one in Western Europe. So that pretty much covered the UFO end of it, and I did that for a long, long time. And then I read a report of cattle mutilation, and then it said versus human mutilation. That was the title of the report. Mm-hmm. And I got into that, and that just, I worked on that for years, and it's still happening. It's out there. That's just scary. When you're thinking of human beings that are being butchered pretty much exactly like a cow, that's a little unnerving. But then, crypto stuff, which I never got into, like Bigfoot and anything like that, started about five years ago. I got a report, and till this day, I still don't know why I got the report, because there's plenty of people out there who do crypto research. Mm-hmm. And I got this report of a gentleman up in the upper northern part of our state in county, who is a retired commercial pilot. He's also a retired Air Force combat pilot. Okay. And he walks his dog, 2 dogs every day, 2 Weimaraners, and he takes them to the same spot every day, which is a game land that is very close to where he lives. And he parks outside the gate, goes in the gate with the dogs, and he takes the same route. Well, he gets about halfway through his route, which is nothing but a trail, with the dogs, and the dogs start going berserk. I mean, they are losing it. They're pulling on him, and Weimaraners are not little dogs. So,
no, they're not.
I mean, they were giving him a hard time, and, you know, he didn't see anything, and he thought, well, you know, there's probably a raccoon in there or a squirrel. They're going nuts over. And then it happened where this thing walked out of the bush on the brush and woods on the right-hand side of the thing, and walked in front of him, paid no attention to him or the dogs. I don't know about you guys, but if I got 2 dogs barking and wanting to get at me, I'm looking for a treat.
Yeah.
And it paid no attention to him. It just strolled across there and went in the other side, across the trail, and that was it. So when I got the description, to be honest with you, I thought he was losing it. I thought, you know, this guy ought to start buying better whiskey. But when he gave the report, you know, I took the report and I got a hold of all the information I could on these types of beings, which everybody said was a werewolf, but it's not a werewolf. And dogman, well, it's not a dogman. They're talking about 2 different things there, right there. But then, so I named it a bipedal canine. And then it might have been 3 weeks went by, and I got another report. 5 miles, 10 miles from the original report. And I thought, now this is crazy, because this guy is describing exactly what that guy described. So I get a call back, and I skipped ahead a little bit here, but I want to go back to the first guy. So he calls me the next day, and he said him and his buddies are going to load up guns, and they're going to go out and find this thing. I'm going, I don't think I'd do that. That doesn't sound like a real good idea to me. And, well, we're going to find it. So they did go out, and they walked up the trail, and you could see where the dogs had actually dug holes in the ground trying to get to it. And there were 3 of them, and they were carrying high-powered weapons, and they went into the woods, and they didn't see anything. They went into the other side, and they all stopped, all kind of looked at each other and thought, like, this is really a bad idea. We need to get out of here now. And they backed their way all the way out to their vehicles and left. And until this day, he's not gone back. He said, I'll never go back there again. So the description that he gave me and the second person gave me were identical. Now, we've had 29, I think 31 since then. Every description is exactly alike. No deviation, nothing. They're all described the same creature, which is a very tall, 8 to 10 foot being with a large wolf head, short pointed ears, very extremely large chest, long arms, muscular arms with hands, not paws, thin-waisted, heavy-legged, hawk legs like a dog, and glowing yellow eyes, and dark color, either very dark brown or black. And, you know, so then I started going backwards, which is what every good researcher should do. Don't take what you saw today without checking if anything happened like that before. Right. And so I went backwards, and lo and behold, I find a report in a newspaper article. I think it was the Erie era back in 1868, where a farmer accosts one of these things in a field trying to go after his goats. I think it was goats, either goats or sheep. And he takes a shot at it. So he goes back into town. They didn't have any police back then. So he goes to the local constable, and he makes his report to the constable. And the constable, of course, tells the guy at the newspaper. That description in that newspaper from 1868 is identical to mine.
Wow.
Size, shape, color, glowing yellow eyes, long muscular arms with hands, everything. Everything's the same. So they've been around a long time, which led me to believe. Yeah. So which led me to believe in my mind, could they have something to do with the indigenous? Because at one time, Pennsylvania was all Indian. We had no white people here back in the days, in the 1700s, right. Mid-1700s. So I thought, well, So I got a hold of the Cherokee because they were them and the Susquehannock were the largest groups of indigenous in Pennsylvania. So I got a hold of Cherokee tribe out in Oklahoma and started describing it. And, right off the get-go, the guy kind of stops me in mid-sentence. He says, "You're either dealing with a skinwalker or you're dealing with a watcher." And I said, "Okay, I know what a skinwalker is. What's a watcher?" He says, "They guard burial grounds." And he said, "They'll be there forever." And I went, "Okay." So, and then I started looking up burial grounds in Pennsylvania. Well, they're all over the place. They're everywhere because there were like, I forget, 9 or 10 tribes here. They were all at war with each other. They all hated each other. And the Susquehannock were the taller, the bigger, the stronger of the group. So they were the ones that were more or less like the King Tuts, So,
right.
And it just went on from there. And then, of course, the Bigfoot sightings came in and a few paranormal things, but it's just weird. And as far as the human mutilations goes, I was actually giving a presentation in Philadelphia. And I had read this report about somebody finding a body in Brazil.
Would you mind? We need to take a break, but
sure.
We'll get back to that as soon as we get back. So for right now, we need to take a station identification break, and we will be back with the Full Spectrum Project and our guest Butch Witkowski as soon as we get back.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk radio.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Since 1948, Fate Magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
And we are back with the Full Spectrum Project, and our guest tonight is Butch Witkowski. And we've been talking about human mutilation Butch was just about to tell us about one of the more, I guess, famous cases, although it seems like human mutilations have been tried to be covered up. So why don't you continue with what you were saying there, Butch, about the Brazil case?
Excuse me. Well, it really started in the 1960s when there were a lot of rumors coming to the forefront of human corpses being found with the same types of wounds as found on cattle. And they were pretty much dismissed as being in very bad taste by ufologists. And, there were a lot of them. I mean, there was Sergeant J.P. Lovett case, U.S. Air Force, 1956. They were shooting off some targets, and him and this colonel went out to retrieve whatever they could. And the colonel heard him screaming, turned around, and he was being sucked up into a craft. And then, of course, a couple of days later, they found the body, which was mutilated. Then the most documented is the Guadarapanga Dam case in Brazil.
Well, if we can get back to the Lovett case just briefly, I had read and that the major had said that Lovett was being dragged into what he described kind of as a saucer,
correct,
by a almost like a tentacle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so, I know a lot of people look at grays, but, as the end-all, be-all of aliens. But how does the tentacle that's dragging Sergeant Lovett into the spacecraft, how does that coincide with the grays?
Well, I don't think it coincided. It could have been part of the ship, could have been something like some type of a cable or device used to pull stuff into the ship. The funny thing not funny, but the strange thing about the Lovett case was that when the major went back and advised, what happened, they were going to charge him with murder. And, of course, a couple of days later, the body was found. And that case was hushed up so quick it was unbelievable. But till this date, the best report out there is the Guadarapanga Dam in 1988. And the autopsy report, which I did get a hold of the autopsy report, and I had it translated from Portuguese to English. Don't ever do that. That is very expensive. Death was due to massive trauma. There was no signs of liver or rigor mortis. Time of death was placed at between 40 and 72 hours before that was discovered. No bloating or noticeable amount of blood was at the scene, but the report included in about 4 different locations the words vital reaction. And one of the things that the term vital reaction is really, it indicates a response of living tissue to injury. So like if I would, stick a knife in your arm, you would pull away and pull that. And by definition, it can only occur during life, that type of wound. So therefore, it's kind of an index of antemortem injury, which means it's pretty much considerable importance in forensic medicine because it attempts to establish that an injury was inflicted before death. So possibly used in estimating time of the infliction before death also. So if you would take a dead body and just stab in the middle of their stomach, cut down to make an X or a cross or whatever, nothing would happen. You just see the cut. There's nothing there. But right. when you see the wounds of a person that was living when that was done, then you see the black and blue. You see the blood, the tearing, and all that stuff. But what that boils down to is when you look at all the damage done to this guy, it means that he was alive when all this stuff was happening. All of it.
That's kind of gruesome.
He was not dead. He was alive. So when those procedures were inflicted upon him, he was just as alive as you and I are right now.
Wow.
Now, also in the animal realm, there was a case. The horse was, I think, a horse was called Skippy or something like that. But the two detectives that were there to view the body of this mutilated horse.
Yeah, I remember this case.
The one detective looked at the other one. He said, "Now, let me get this straight. The horse is laying on its side." He said, "So if the horse was down and eye was removed, the viscous fluid would flow off the side of the horse's face, correct?" And he went like, "Yeah." So he said, "Why, in this case, where the eyes were removed, the viscous fluid is flowing straight down his snout and off the end of his snout, which means the horse was upright when it happened."
Oh, man.
So if you're saying that the person that was found in Brazil in 1988 was alive, if I remember the case correctly, didn't he have his eyes removed, ears, tongue, and genitalia along with his digestive organs? You're basically saying that all of that was removed while he was alive?
Correct. I just pulled up the autopsy report. So the decedent was found with the following surgically removed: eyes, left ear, inner ear, lower jaw, inner throat, and tongue. There were 1 inch to 1.5 inch holes in the following areas where muscle tissue and glands were removed: shoulder, chest, navel, and thigh. The testicles removed. The prostate gland was removed via the urethral tube. The intestines were removed via a hole in the navel. The anus was cored out to the colon, just like a cattle. The body presented no signs of bloating, which in itself is remarkable due to the high heat. It's like 100 and some degrees out there, and that range. And there was no body odor or discoloration whatsoever.
Yeah. So from what I gathered, there was no sign of decomposition of the body whatsoever. Is that correct?
No, none. No. No. They assumed that by the test they took on the scene that he was laying there for 40 to 70 hours.
With all that damage that was done to this poor man, nobody had heard any screams or cries or anything?
No, he was actually, the Guadaparanga Dam is actually a very large lake area that supplies all the water to Sao Paulo.
Okay.
And it's very large. And he was actually found on one of the small islands out in the middle of that lake by a couple fishermen who never even got close to it. They saw from their boat what they thought was a body. And smartly, they went in and got the police, and the police came out and they brought a forensic team with them. So that was great because the forensic guys got the photographs, they got all the measurements, they got everything they needed. But it was just very bizarre. I mean, when you look at the pictures that accompany the autopsy, I mean, it's kind of disgusting.
So what did the coroner attribute the fact that there was no bloating, no decomposition? What were their findings with that?
The autopsy report is very clear at the very end of it, where it just says the autopsy, the 3 doctors that worked on him said death was due to massive trauma. There were no gunshots, no animal marks or anything like that. He wasn't attacked or anything like that. Death was due to massive trauma. There were no signs of rigor or livor mortis, so he wasn't stiff or anything like that. Time of death was placed between 40 and 72 hours before discovery. There was no bloating or noticeable amount of blood at the scene. And vital reaction, reviewed wounds of vital reaction showed that the gentleman was alive when all this took place. Their conclusion was that unknown.
Huh. So they didn't even hazard a guess as to what could have happened.
Oh, I'm sure they probably hazarded a guess, but they weren't about to say it.
Yeah.
But they weren't. Yeah, they weren't going to put it down on paper.
No.
Yeah.
Well, can you continue on about Skippy? What they came across? What came up with that?
Skippy, they believed, was a cattle mutilation, type deal.
Okay.
If I remember right, there was a report that came out in June of 1980 from the federal government that concluded that mutilations, and we're talking animal mutilations, were predominantly the result of natural predation. What do you think of those findings?
BS. If you would look at photographs of cattle mutilations and there's many of them out there. So if you'd look at all of those and look at the damage done.
There's a purpose.
And then look up any picture of any animal that was killed by a predator, like a wolf or coyotes. Totally different.
Yes,
totally different. I mean, they'll a coyote or wolf attack. They go into the stomach to get into the inside of the stuff. They might chew off the ears. They might chew around the butt a little bit, but that's it. They're done. They get what they want and they're out of there.
Yeah.
And now the newest ones that came out come out of the United Kingdom, where they're finding sheep. Let me back up just a bit here. You all seen the movie Predator?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. He used that little laser thing off of his shoulder and shows down a triangle 3-beam deal as a target.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
They found sheep in the United Kingdom that were mutilated, and the basic things were taken, like lower jaw, tongue, this, that, and the other thing, eyes. But on each one of them, behind the right eye ear area, they found these 3 triangle holes, perfect holes. And what was missing? The brain. No cattle mutilation that I've ever read a report on in this country had the brain removed. The sheep in the United Kingdom, they had their brains removed, plus the other stuff like the lower jaw, tongue, eyes, cored out anal area, stuff like that.
So, what were the findings from the British government, or whoever checked out those mutilations?
Unknown.
They just put unknown.
Mm-hmm.
What are your
when you don't want to talk about something that kind of goes against the grain, the first thing you say is, I don't know, it's unknown.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, what are your thoughts on why they're taking the same pieces of these bodies? Is there
well, there is a theory, and
okay.
It's only a theory, but there is a gentleman, a scientist in Puerto Rico working on it, that the organs that are taken all have a certain chemical. Now, that certain chemical is not only in humans, it is in cattle, horses, pretty much any mammal.
Okay.
And if you combine those chemicals that are taken from those parts that are removed, it's almost like an aphrodisiac, or this is what they're saying, not me, them, an aphrodisiac, or almost like a high, or it could be a life-sustaining thing for them. And they've been at it now for 3 years. And they've tested it on some, lab animals, and, animals that are like really sluggish and, probably on their last legs, and they give them an injection of this mixture, and they have different types of mixtures.
Okay.
These animals start, running around like they were born yesterday. So is it being used as some type of a drug? Do they need this to get into our atmosphere, or, walk around in our atmosphere, or whatever? They just don't know. There's just nobody wants to touch this stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's just, you start talking about this stuff at a conference, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble real quick. Because people do not. Yeah, people don't want. What's that?
I said at a conference you could get into trouble. I thought that's one of the reasons why people go is to learn this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Really.
Okay, all right.
So, you were talking about this aphrodisiac. Now, is that both the reason that they're doing animal mutilations and human mutilations, trying to get the aphrodisiac from both species, as it were?
Yeah, and I guess aphrodisiac would be a good word, but it's just like in layman's terms, serotonin.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's when they start doing their mixtures and this, that, and the other thing. They're coming up with something that is akin to our serotonin. So now what they're trying to figure out now is why would they need this serotonin? What do they need it for?
Well, do they? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and this stuff's been going on for a long time. There's reports and researchers have found in England documentation of mummified remains that were found of missing people that were found in trees in the 16th through the 19th centuries with those same type of holes in their body. So,
that didn't have anything to do with the mummification process or anything like that? Because I know, if I remember correctly, in mummification, they will remove organs and things like that. So this is completely different, is what you're getting at as far as
well, Egyptian mummification was removal of the brain, innards. The only thing left inside of you was the heart, and they discarded the rest of the stuff in the canopic jars that went with the burial. But these people had the same holes as our boy in Guadaparanga Dam.
Wow. Did they have the same? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and this is back in the 16th century.
So, unfortunately, we need to take another break. But as soon as we get back, we definitely want to continue with this chain of thought. So this is the Full Spectrum Project. We are speaking with Butch Witkowski about some stuff that is kind of both mesmerizing me and making me want to kind of hide. But as soon as we get back, we'll be back with Butch Witkowski, and please stay with us. This is a fascinating conversation.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
And we are back with the Full Spectrum Project, and our guest tonight is Butch Witkowski. My apologies for kind of messing up your name there. I need to get a little bit of water. So we were talking a little bit about the possible reasons for the extraterrestrials to be taking certain organs, and you had mentioned that it was a possibility that they were producing either an aphrodisiac or a hormone that they need. I know that I had found that there is another theory behind that they are actually taking these parts to try and make a alien human hybrid that would be able to walk among humans unnoticed, and that way they could further their exploration or whatever it is they're doing with us. What's your theory on that particular aspect?
Well, I mean, if they could construct a hybrid, I'm sure I'd have a real problem with why they needed the anal area out of a cow. Although I do know a few of those people.
Pete, what have you been saying about me?
The theory about hybrids has been around a long time. I mean, it goes way back in history. But the only problem is that they're kind of like they're like the Men in Black. They're never seen. They're talked about but never seen. Mm-hmm. There's no proof that they even exist. That hybrids are the same as reptilians. I mean, people say they see reptilians, but everybody has a different description. They all wind up looking like the creature from the Black Lagoon. I would rather put my 2 cents on that. There's something in what they're taking that they need that serotonin-like mixture for their own benefit. Now, whether it's, I can't imagine, they're like making stew or something like that. I mean, it just makes no sense. But maybe it helps them with their, that they could breathe our oxygen or that it would help them in our atmosphere or something like that. But there's just so little known, and we're at that point where we need to focus on why we're really doing this, and it isn't all about organizations or bureaucracy or politics. It's the hunt for the truth, and sometimes finding the truth, you have more chance of pulling teeth in a wildcat in a phone booth. So there are a lot of theories. I welcome all theories. I'll listen to anything. Some stuff is compelling, and some stuff is just, of course, nonsense. But, as long as there's people out there with questions and, they have an interest or they found something, and we get a lot of that stuff. I get a lot of emails where, people they heard something or, they just want to know if it was true or if it really happened or, that kind of stuff. But, some stuff you can answer and some things you can't. But as far as why they would need this, and this goes back a long time. It's not like that they just started doing cattle mutilations 2 weeks ago. I mean, this goes back centuries. And so for centuries they've been taking it's the same parts, whether it's human or cattle or animal related.
What is the earliest recorded cattle mutilation? Or animal mutilation?
Well, in the U.S., I think it was in the very early 60s.
Okay.
So I was kind of curious. You're saying that one of the earliest known things for cattle mutilation was in the 60s. I do know that there are a lot of theories out there that the mutilations are actually, satanic cults, other types of cults, and things like that. What are your thoughts on this theory?
Well, that theory is shot long already, because the way that these bits and pieces are extracted from the animal, we don't, till this day, we don't have anything that could do that. The removal of an eye where there is a perfect circle cut down to the skull, but it doesn't mark the skull, and then the eye is removed, and or tissue is removed. Cows have more than one stomach, so many veterinarians have already said, wait, there's no way you could do that, because they lay right next to the udder area. So when the udder is removed in a perfect circle, and those three stomachs are exposed, and they do not have a nick in them, and yet the wound is perfectly cut and cauterized. So when they say cauterized, you automatically think laser. And it's like the one veterinarian in Montana said, to do that, to make that type of a precision cut and not touch anything else, which is right there, he said, first of all, that laser machine would be so huge that it's not like they're going to operate on your gallbladder. He said, you're taking out a sizable amount of tissue, and you're not damaging any tissue doing it. And it just can't be done. And the fact that when these animals are found, if they find one in the snow, there's no tracks, there's no blood, there's no vehicle tracks, footprints, or anything like that. And another thing, and it's been recorded quite a number of times where a pack of wolves has walked by one of these animals that has been mutilated. They won't touch it. They'll walk around it. They'll go out of their way to go around it. Now, they're passing up free lunch. Ain't a wolf in the world in his right mind is going to pass up a free lunch. Coyotes won't touch it, nothing.
What do you think the reasons are that the animals are giving up this free lunch?
Well, it could be they sense something that we don't. I know that there have been researchers that said when they got to one of these bodies that were more or less a fresh kill, couple of days, couple of weeks, that they still were detecting EMF readings, electromagnetic field readings on the dead animal, on the carcass. But the blood, none. Where'd the blood go? Why are they taking the blood? What do they need that for?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Is it true that many of the mutilation cases had all of the blood drained with no sign of like a drop anywhere? And at the same time, there's no footprints have been found around the bodies.
Nope.
And I mean, how do the, for lack of a better word, how do the authorities explain all of this?
They don't. I mean, these, you're talking about a sizable amount of money for one of these animals. And, so those reports go right to the police department the minute one is found. And so everybody kind of does what they do, but that's as far as it goes, because they don't have an answer. There's only a few veterinarians that I've ever heard of that actually tried to find out something. And so it's one of those things where you have a lot of ideas, right? But you have no proof. The evidence you have is there, but it's totally worthless because you don't know why it happened or why this stuff was taken. Why was this animal done in like that?
So one of the things that you were saying is with eyes, udders, the sex organs, even the anus and things like that being removed with surgical precision.
Yep.
It doesn't seem feasible to assume that a simple cult would or could do this unless, of course, one of the cult members was a brilliant surgeon. How is it that the government continues to try and feed us this line? And do they really think that we're believing it after all this time?
I think they gave up on that a few years ago. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you start looking at some of the carcasses that, a hippie high on whatever couldn't make that straight of a cut without drawing any blood. No way. It's just, first of all, cowhide is tough. You're not getting out your pocket knife and cutting through that. And it's wild. I mean, I investigated a case in North Dakota, and when they sent me the pictures, I couldn't believe it. And it was a young girl riding her equestrian ride inside of an indoor ring. Now, inside this indoor ring, there's, a stable area, then there's a tack area, and then there's the ring itself, and it's very large. And she was just riding around, and she stopped in the middle of the ring, dropped her reins. The horse just stood there. She went to get something out of her tack box, which is like, in her estimation, maybe 30 yards away, got what she was looking for, came back, and there stood the horse with half of its lower jaw was gone. Surgically removed. The horse didn't move an inch. It was nothing like the horse got caught on something like nail. No, there would be nothing like that sticking out in the equestrian ring where there's kids riding around.
Right.
And a perfect surgical removal of the lower jaw of this full-size horse. He never whinnied. Look, you hit a horse on the ass with your hand hard enough, he'll either kick you or he's going to bite you, but you're going to hear him. He's going to say something.
You'll definitely know.
Generally speaking.
This horse stood there while somebody removed his lower jaw on the left-hand side. So they got a vet, and the vet came, there's no way we can save him, so they put him down. And the vet said he doesn't know how anybody could do that. I mean, even the bone where the lower jaw, and that's a big jaw piece, where that was removed at the hinge of the jaw, he said that precision cut. He said, I couldn't do that if I had all day with just a skull. He said,
wow.
And there was very little blood. There was just a little, you could see on the picture, you could see just a little bit of blood right at his left nostril. That was it. The horse wasn't spooked.
Did anybody ever come up with a theory on that?
Well, the one the vet that put him down said that there's nobody he knew of on this planet that could do that. Not in that short a period of time. He said if he had to do that in an operating room surgically, he said, you're talking about hours. This girl only walked like 30 yards away. The horse never moved. He was standing in the same spot. The reins were hanging there just where she left them.
Wow. All right, so we're going to have to take another break. When we come back at the top of the hour, we will be visiting with Angie Mole, who will be doing the Weird World News segment. So we will see you in just a few minutes. Pete?
No!
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, with a person that needs no introduction, I will give an introduction. It is Angie Mole with the Weird World News.
Hey y'all, how's everybody doing?
Doing great, Angie. How are you?
I am just fine. I am really enjoying, especially this last part that we've been talking about, with this with the mutilation part. The part that I specifically thought was so interesting because I have, I guess, some frame of reference to it was when he was talking about the animals that will not scavenge on these experimented animals, and I just think that's really, really interesting. So I've been enjoying listening to y'all talk about that.
Now, come on. We know you just love the whole thing about butt removals. It's utter nonsense.
Oh no! Oh no! Get the stick.
Sorry.
Wait a minute. Were you trying to make an udder joke?
I would never do that. Never.
Yeah, because
never.
I mean, you have seen a cow's anatomy, right? There are two, or never mind.
You know, I would
Unrelated.
never do that. That would be utterly ridiculous.
Yes. Okay.
Brian is still trying to figure out how to milk a bull, so just leave him alone.
There's a website.
Oh no, I managed to. You know what? Never mind. We won't. We won't go into that.
Good. Okay.
Really funny tasting milk.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh. I need a vacation. Okay. So
Butch, I'm terribly sorry about the last thing that Brian just said. I'm sorry.
This is not exactly news, but I mean it kind of is, because I was researching and going through recently released papers and that are in journals and stuff. And I read a fascinating paper yesterday called "The Disappearance of Arthur Nestor: Parafiction, Cryptozoology, and Curation" by Kirsty Robertson. And it discusses a curated exhibition called "Beneath the Surface" at Western University in Canada, and that was part of their 2014 program in museum studies. The plot goes that Nestor was a professor who was into cryptozoology and became interested in protecting the lake environments the cryptids inhabited. And evidence pointed to Nestor leaving for London to collaborate with Dr. Roy Mackal of Loch Ness fame. But it's freely available online. I don't want to spoil anything about it besides telling you that Arthur Nestor is not actually missing. But if you're interested in blurry lines between fact and fiction, you might want to check that paper out, or anything about it at all, because it was so interesting to read. Wow, my brain just went completely blank. I'm sorry.
I thought I heard something. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it was that sort of like, we'll be right back, like elevator music. Okay.
Yeah, I heard the baloney theme, but go ahead.
That's weird. That's a you thing. Okay.
Oh, maybe it's my voices. It's my voice.
Sir?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Would you like me to make another utter joke?
Please no.
Okay.
A 20-year-old woman in Michigan was pronounced dead and transported to a funeral home where she was found quite alive and breathing. The young woman has cerebral palsy and is now in the hospital on a ventilator, and the responding firefighters are on admin leave. The 4 firefighters say they were called out for an unresponsive female, where they gave life-saving aid with the local PD present. They were there as well, for 30 minutes, but to no avail. The firefighters pronounced her dead and were clearing the scene when a family member said they heard her breathing. So everybody rushed over to her. After an assessment, they found no signs of life, but as they were driving off, a family member again stopped them and said that they felt a heartbeat on the woman. But again, no signs of life were detected. So they went ahead and wrapped everything up. They called the hospital and called in, that they had declared her. And so what actually happened to the woman after that is in dispute, as the responders and the family's attorney do not agree on the actions and offense. But the attorney says the responders put the woman in a body bag and zipped her up. But the agency said they did not do that, since they left the woman there for the family to make their own funeral home arrangements. So there's some very strange, the stories aren't lining up, but what ended up happening was the woman arrived at the funeral home and they unzipped the bag and her eyes were open and she was breathing.
Yeah, I think I would take some leave also. That would freak me out.
I mean, there was a whole lot of extra detail in the extremely long articles that I read about this, because the first few were the first articles that came out and when the news first broke, and they weren't very complete. And so the ones that came out today had much more information. It was just very strange how, either the firefighters put her in the bag or not, but the agency is saying they don't even carry that equipment on the trucks, or they wouldn't have done that and then left her in an agency bag. So I don't know what the procedures are for that. I thought that was like a funeral home deal, but I don't know. So
that would be utterly terrifying.
Was there?
Oh God.
I'll stop.
Where's the mute button? Okay, so
button too.
This is super interesting also, I thought, because I love this sort of thing. The first research study done on the Musatiles in northwestern Saudi Arabia has been released.
I'm sorry, the what?
Mustatile. I'm getting there.
Okay.
Because I had to look it all up too, because they found more than 100 new structures that have been identified to add to the hundreds that were already located. And these have been dated around 7,000 years old. They are structures that are rectangular in shape, hence the Arabian word mustatile, and basically look like sort of a low stone wall with platforms at either end. And some are as long as 600 meters. They're scattered across all different types of landscapes, but are also in some cases placed right next to each other in some places. So the researcher said, this is a quote, "Our interpretation of mustatiles is that they are ritual sites where groups of people met to perform some kind of currently unknown social activities. Perhaps they were sites of animal sacrifices or of feasts." It's important to note that these structures were erected, that when these structures were erected, the land looked very different than it does today. It was mostly open grassland and scattered lakes back then. So even though it's currently barren desert, it didn't always look like that. And you can see them from Google Earth if you are so inclined.
Wow.
And where is this exactly?
It is in northwestern Saudi Arabia. The name of the desert I didn't write down because I couldn't pronounce it. So I was like,
I don't blame you.
But you got Musatile down.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't explain that.
I'm just kidding you.
No, it's a valid criticism, and I own it. Speaking of language, let's kind of lighten things up a little. The admin for most of the Scottish Wikipedia pages is a self-described furry living in North Carolina and knows nothing of the Scots language. Over the course of almost 7 years, more than 23,000 articles have been written, and 200,000 edits have been made using a terrible version of misspelled English words meant to mimic a Scottish accent when pronounced phonetically.
Oh.
I have seen these pages, and man, it's wild. My family heritage is like English and German, but this was offensive to me. Some people are calling it cultural vandalism, and I can see why they'd say it. This person is literally just some strange American from North Carolina that's never traveled anywhere and dresses up as, I don't know, like a fox or something. As of now, there are two main options. They can either toss out all the content written by the offensive admin, or they can close the site down altogether. They did say that if they closed down the site, they were not going to bother to reopen it. But the main concern is that, you know, with Wikipedia being like a user edited type place, you know, this person became an admin and was accepted into like the Wikipedia community admin group. And then nobody even really noticed that they were sort of sabotaging the whole thing. And I mean, it's kind of a joke, but at the same time, it's like actually really sad.
How bored was this person at the party?
Man, we'll see, that's kind of what I want to know. They did say that the person is young, that they started doing this, I think it was like 2012 when they were still a teenager. Okay. So it may have started out as a joke. And then
now they have to keep it up.
Which, I mean, yeah, they really didn't. I mean,
they did.
It was bad. It was really bad. When I went to go look at it. And what I think is strange is that nobody noticed for all these years or did anything about it.
You're going to have to send me the link so I can add it to our Full Spectrum Project page.
Okay.
So our listeners can look at it.
Okay.
You want to really mess with them? If it's a
Sure.
Wikipedia type of thing, just go on there and start putting up Gaelic.
Well, see, that was the problem, is that, oh, wow, no. So, no.
No?
That would be bad. That would.
See,
but Gaelic.
Go ahead.
Gaelic is so much fun. You have a 75 word or 75 letter word, and it's actually pronounced hello. So
my
it would be
best
fun.
friend in the entire world has 8 children, and he is a fantastic daddy, wonderful father, and he insisted, and this was a joint decision with his wife, so it wasn't like him steamrolling, but they jointly decided all of their children were going to have traditional Gaelic spelling.
Oh.
They're both Texan.
Yeah.
But
So for the longest time, his first child I just called Anna, and his second child I just called Baby Al, because I just completely refused to even try to spell them on birthday cards or anything. I wasn't doing it. But
I don't blame you.
I have gotten much better, but I will get the link and I will send it to you, Pete, so that you can stick it on the page.
I think we need to create a page and do it all in Pig Latin.
I can do that. I mean, it may take me a while.
Oh.
It's been a long time.
That could be interesting.
Yes, yes, it would be.
No, I was kind of thinking.
At the party.
Well, anyway, that's all I got for y'all today.
Well, thank you.
I would.
And Angie, where are we?
We are at WBHM-DB, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Angie. That was interesting as always. I utterly enjoyed that.
Dear Lord.
What? God, you people.
Butch, I apologize. I'm so sorry.
So we are now back with the Full Spectrum Project. I am your host, Brian Clune. I am joined by
Pete Haviland.
Pete. Are you okay, Pete?
Yes, I am.
Anyway, we are joined by Butch Witkowski, and we have been having a fascinating discussion about. Well, we haven't really gone into the alien abductions yet, but we've definitely been having a great conversation about cattle and human mutilations. So when we left, we were talking about cattle mutilations, the fact that there are, in a lot of these, there are no blood has been found either in the animal or outside the animal, no footprints. And one of the things that really kind of surprised me was the fact that a lot of these mutilated animal corpses have actually been found in extreme remote areas, and some of them have actually been seen suspending from like telephone poles and things like that, and others have been known to have been they look like they've been dropped from a great height. What do you have to say about that theory there, Butch?
I haven't seen any of those reports. I've heard of them, but I've never seen the reports. No. First of all, if they would have been dropped, they're a very weighty animal, 1,500, 2,000 pounds. They would have made an indent in the ground, but there was never anything like that found. The ones in trees and stuff like that, again, I've never seen the reports. I've heard of them, but I've never seen the reports or seen any photographs of the mutilated cow or whatever hanging from a tree or high power lines or something like that.
Do you think those are just reports that have been over exaggerated to make whoever it was that found them more newsworthy?
Yeah, it's pretty much a lot of that.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, unfortunately, I deal a lot with the paranormal, and we find that a lot in the paranormal community where they exaggerate things. Something that I noticed, and maybe I didn't get it right on one of your websites, was you've investigated a possible relation to Bigfoot sightings in relation to UFO sightings. Can you now, if I didn't get that wrong, can you kind of go into that and explain what you meant by that?
Actually, that theory is from Stan Gordon, where sightings of UFOs and Bigfoot have gone together. I've never had any reports like that. A lot of the reports where they have UFO sightings, there have been reports where people have gone out in their yard and they see a Bigfoot piloting a saucer, that kind of stuff. But the only thing that bothers me about the Bigfoot reports that are strange to me, I'm not talking about just the object ones that people see and they photograph and all that stuff, or they're caught on trail cam.
Right.
I've seen in the last, I'm going to say 3 years, there have been, I'm not going to say a whole lot of reports, but a sizable amount, maybe 10 or 15, where people see a Bigfoot or what they consider a Bigfoot, and there's a flash of light and it disappears, or the opposite, where there's a flash of light and something does appear. Those reports are kind of weird because, what's the flash of light? Are we getting into that interdimensional type thing.
I was just gonna ask if have about the interdimensional part of that, and have you heard any more of anybody else that's seen that?
Well, the interdimensional thing started about 6-8 years ago when a lot of Bigfoot researchers couldn't come up with any answers. We had no body, they had no hair, they had no this, they had no that. They had no evidence whatsoever. Every picture was blurry. Bigfoot was deemed the hide-and-seek champion of the world. So in 50-some years of research, they had nothing. No DNA, nothing like that. And then, then they say, well, Dr. Melba Ketchum had DNA. Well, how'd she have DNA when she had no control subject? Right? So if I'm going to get DNA and I want it to match, I have to get somebody that's living or dead that I can retrieve that from to match the DNA that I've just taken the sample. Well, that's never happened. So I think, and I'm like-minded with a couple other guys on this theory, that when they had no more answers to those questions, which were valid questions, extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence, right?
Yes.
So when they started with they didn't have this, they didn't have that, blah, 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 then all of a sudden we're thinking it went interdimensional. Now, there is no way on God's green earth that you could prove interdimensional travel, first of all. But the reports where I've read, and some were from, very serious researchers where they saw bright light in the woods and they saw something. They don't say what it was. They saw something. Or they saw something and then there was a bright flash, like an old flash bulb for a camera, and then it disappeared. So what is that all about? Now, we've had one bipedal report, 2 witnesses in a car came upon this thing eating roadkill. Now, there's the key point. Eating roadkill. Why would something interdimensional need to eat?
Okay. I could see that.
So that particular animal, as they got closer to that animal in their vehicle, it stood up and it seemed to have an aura around it. Now, that could have been fur and high beam headlights hitting wet fur, and just highlighting the edges. Or it could have been something else. There just isn't enough investigative reports to put you in any direction that you can follow. A lot of this stuff it's either found by mistake or it's accidental. And it is what it is, but the problem is, what is it? And that's going to be the question. That's going to be the question until the end of time.
Pete,
Pete,
hold on a sec. We need to take another break.
Okay.
But as soon as we get back, Pete, go ahead and ask your question, and we'll be back with the Full Spectrum Project with our guest Butch Witkowski in just a minute.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
And we are back on the Full Spectrum Project with our guest, Butch Witkowski. And Pete, I believe when we left for the break, you had a question for Butch.
Yes, I did. With all of these missing folks coming up or being reported in our national forests, do you think that Bigfoot has anything to do with taking these people, kids and adults, and do you think that they are consuming them? Do you think that they're holding them or killing them? What do you think?
You mean like the missing 411 reports?
Yeah, like that.
Okay. Well, a bunch of them have been animal attacks.
Okay.
Another bunch of them have been just absolute flat-out disappearances, never found again, which could be anything, because most predators, when they kill, they'll hide the body. They'll feed on it till it's done, and they move on.
Right.
So, and in the areas where a lot of these people have disappeared during the 411 research is so far from human people. I mean, you'd have to drive with a car for an hour to go to your neighbor's house. Mm-hmm. As far as the abduction, I don't know so much if they'd be abduction as I believe that, what is it? Alaska has 16,000 missing people that they never found.
Right.
So,
wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. But when you have that amount of people missing and never found, and they contribute a lot of it to, people move from Brooklyn, they move to Alaska, they're going to be hunters. And they go out in the wilderness. That's the last time they see them, or they see a bear and they want to pet it, which the grizzlies like. But I'm
not a hunter, and I know not to pet a bear.
So I guess there's a lot more reasons. They get lost, they starve, they fall in canyons, ravines, they get lost in caves. I guess there's so many things when you talk about the missing people. But, when you look at human abduction, I mean, if you just look at the NCIC statistics, which is National Crime Information Center, mm-hmm. The last one I did was in 2009 when I looked it up, and it was in 2009 they reported, now they're always a year behind, so it actually would have been 2007 report. There were 778,000 missing persons reported, filed with the FBI and police departments. 95% are found. Like 75% are like runaways under the age of 18. Screw you, Dad. I'm going to join the circus. That kind of stuff.
Right. Well, also you have the human trafficking thing too.
Yeah, and 20% are spousal abuse, murders, elderly, ransom demands, etc. But the number that kept coming up, and I went back pretty far. I went back to like 1991.
Okay.
And 5% are never found. Okay, so for that 2009 number, that's 38,908 people are never found. So when I went back to 1991 and took those reports and totaled everything up, those reports came to 13,861,000. And using the same math, the same way I got the other numbers, using that same 5%, 693,000 are never found. That's no trace, no clothing, no evidence, nothing, zero, nada, end of story. So when you take that over 17 years, there's like 50,000 people missing a year in this country. That's just the United States. That has nothing to do with Canada or South America or anything. That's just the United States. So 40,000 people a year.
And those are all people that have absolutely no trace of ever disappearing or where they could have gone.
Correct. No bodies, no clothing, no nothing. Gone.
Wow.
Now, there are reports from Africa where whole villages have disappeared like that. There was a village in Kenya, and that was in, if I remember, I may be wrong, it was like 1998, 1999, where the tribal men got up early, had their little breakfast, whatever they do, packed up and went to work. They, walked off to work, do whatever they do. So there were about 200 people in this encampment, this little village, men, women, children, old, young, babies, whatever. And the guys came back at the end of the day, and the food was still on the table. Some things were cooking on the fires. Animals were gone. People were gone. No signs of struggle. No blood. No nothing like that. No footprints. They're just gone. So approximately 125 to 145 of that 200 were just gone. Never found. Never seen again. Clothing was still where it was.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say clothing was hanging where it was. Wash was on the line. Food was on the table. Every man, woman, child, chicken, dog, everything was gone.
Well, that sort of kind of put something in my head. We've heard a lot about like ghost ships that all of a sudden had their entire crew, passengers, everybody just disappearing. I wonder if, yeah, exactly. So, I wonder if that doesn't have the same, possibility of them just being abducted. I never really even thought about that before.
Yeah, but now you're talking time and space.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the late 60s, when the Arabs were all fighting with each other over there, and the British were kind of watching, a pilot, a captain, a pilot, and a colonel, as an observer, took off in a small surveillance plane to check up on a local tribe that was planning on doing a bunch of bad stuff. And they were just trying to locate their position and stuff, so if anything went wrong, they could step in and stop it before it got bad. And they lost contact, and they sent out a patrol, and they found the plane. Plane had plenty of fuel, wasn't wrecked, it landed, started right up. There was no mechanical issues with it. They found 2 sets of prints on the passenger side exiting the plane. And side by side, these footprints walk off into about 200 yards and vanish. And that was the end of them. They got in that plane and flew the plane right back. So there's stories like that and reports like that to go. I mean, you could go to infinity with reports like that. I mean, how do you prove anything when you don't have anything?
Yeah, exactly.
I can understand if, the lady was sending her husband threatening letters, and then, the last thing they get on her is she bought a new shovel and pick for the yard, and he disappears. Well, it's pretty easy to put that one together. But these people are just, there was a very famous contractor. I'm going to say he was in Colorado. I may be wrong on the state, but I'm pretty sure it was Colorado. From the drive where his driveway starts to back to where his home was a quarter of a mile. Very large property, very well-liked guy, very successful. Had a whole bunch of people at his house for a barbecue. His wife said to his wife, he's going to jump on the ATV, run down and pick up the mail. Jumps on the ATV, goes down, and he's gone. Never seen again. No struggle, no signs of struggle. The ATV is in gear, shut off, key turned off, up on a little embankment, like that's where it came to rest. The mail was still there, and he's never been seen of again. And that was many years ago, and they still, till this day, they're still looking for him, and they still have a $100,000 reward if you can find him.
Are there any cases where people have been missing for a long period of time, and then had come back? And did they ever? And if there is, had they ever talked about what happened to them?
No, never seen any like that.
No. Okay.
No, it seems like once they're gone, they're gone. That's it.
Okay.
I mean,
now,
that's just what the 411 cases are.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed when you're talking about all of these abductions is it always seems like there is literally no trace of where the person could have gone. Have there ever been any of these missing cases that actually did show like maybe a sign of a struggle, but not necessarily something that could be explained, if you kind of get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. No, nothing like, an attack of any type or robbery or, that kind of stuff, or hit and run, and they just left them lay. The ones that were found were basically here in Pennsylvania anyway, from the mapping and stuff that we have. Were pretty much elderly gentlemen that were out hunting when they shouldn't have been, so, they just died, or they got lost, or they died of hypothermia. I mean, those bodies were found, but it's the other ones in the state where, particularly the one where a gentleman, upstate Pennsylvania, would be the north central section, was walking with his son, a young boy, 6 years old, a daughter, 8 years old, just for a walk. They were on a walk in a park. And he turned around and said to the little girl, I said, come on, she was heading one direction, boy was heading the other. And he got the girl and said, come on, let's go, it's time to go back. And he turned around and the boy was gone. Never found him. That happened in a matter of less than a minute. No struggle, no signs, no cries, no nothing. Just gone. And that's the part that's very disturbing.
Does that bring back the theory of interdimensionality, that they could have just walked away? I mean, just walked into oblivion?
That's a good theory. A lot of people do ascribe to that theory where, we've had aircraft, the Bermuda Triangle is a perfect example of that.
Right.
Where a plane takes off and, they're talking to it, and all of a sudden it's gone. It's never found again. It didn't crash, or no distress signal or anything like that. So it's a very strange world. And although I'd like to say, we're all out there trying to do the best we can, we are. But, you can only go so far, because certain things you can't get access to. We certainly can't go look at underground bases, places that are restricted, we're kept away from. So, and I understand that too, but it's just, there's just so many things that, you know, you want to do, but you can't because, well, basically you can't.
There was a case that I read about, and I wanted to get your thought on it. There was a gentleman that claimed that he was working at Area 51, and he was in the real deep bowels of it, and he claimed that there was a firefight with the aliens that are down there, and he got part of his hand blown off and something else. I mean, do you think there's any truth to that? I mean, it sounds like it's real out there, but you know, again, we do live in a strange world. So I'd like to get your thought on it if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, you know, he didn't last too long either. Yeah, he was done away with.
Yeah.
But see, there were some. If you go back and there's a website, I'm pretty sure it's still up. It's been up for many years. Okay. Who's killing our investigators? Mm-hmm. And when you read some of that stuff, I mean, it's like crazy. It's just crazy. And what do you do? What do you say? You know, you have no place to go. Somebody, you know, always get the person that says, "Well, why don't you just check on this, that, and the other thing?" Well, what do you think? We didn't do that?
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, so go ahead. Go ahead, Butch.
No, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, we were talking kind of about how a lot of the investigators seem to sort of vanish or mysteriously die. But I'm wondering now, and I'd like to get your opinion on the videos and things like that are coming out, like with you know, the Navy footage and airline pilot footage and things like that. Don't forget the
Men in Black footage too that's been coming out.
Well, yeah, you know, any of that stuff. Do you think that is going to help to open up the government as far as you know, letting us kind of in on what is actually going on?
Yeah, eventually. I was at a conference in Washington, D.C. I was sitting next to a gentleman named John Alexander. Almost had a heart attack when I found out who he was. But and he said many years ago, he said this. He said, "Look," he said, "there's not going to be any disclosure. We already told you there's stuff up there we don't know about. If you read Project Blue Book," he said, "there's 1,554 cases in there that were never solved. We had no idea what they were." And he said, "They're in there." So he says, if we don't know what they are, we're not saying that they don't exist. We're just saying we don't know what they are. So they're unidentified, right? Right. And and the stuff that the pilots are coming through now, it always amazes me that when something really interesting pops up, there's a television show about it.
Yeah.
Instantly. I mean, you know, here's the film. Tomorrow we start a new series. I don't know. I rely on the reports, and they go back a long time ago. I mean, when you think of the Foo Fighters in World War II, the Japs thought they were ours, the Germans thought they were ours, we thought they belonged to the Japs, we thought they belonged to the Germans. Nobody knew what they were, but they were orbs that followed, could circle, chase, do whatever they wanted to do up in the sky. Right. So, when you look at the German, the Wunderwaffen, which was their unit that produced all these fantastic crafts. I mean, why are we not investigating? You know, why did the government not investigate that? Or maybe they did. I don't know. But I'm saying you never hear anything about the Wunderwaffen other than there's a few drawings out there and, you know, the Thule Society and all that garbage. But they were so far advanced that, you know, we didn't even know what a rocket was.
Yeah, pretty much.
We were still dropping bombs, iron bombs on people. These guys were delivering rockets. These guys were delivering rockets hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles away.
Well, that's why was it Project Paperclip when we took their folks and we started developing our own stuff.
Yeah.
Hey Pete, we need to take another break, but when we come back, we will continue speaking with Butch Witkowski. And please join us when we on the other side.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
And we are back with the Full Spectrum Project. We have been speaking with Butch Witkowski about all kinds of fascinating animal mutilations, human mutilations, UFOs, alien abductions. It's been absolutely fascinating. Now, one of the things that I thought was kind of weird, and I think it might just be me, but I'm actually a writer, and I've been trying to break out into fiction. And I actually tried to write a sci-fi book a while back, but I really couldn't get into it because after about 15 to 20 minutes, every time I would write it, I kept getting drunk. And it was just really bizarre. I mean, I wasn't drinking anything. I guess I should have stayed away from the space bar, but, it was just one of those things.
Oh, my God.
What?
Butch, I'm sorry. We try to talk to him about it. He keeps slipping them in.
I do not. Okay.
Angie, so where was the stick? We needed the stick.
I'm getting sneaky. Anyway, you had said that alien abductions actually started well before the cattle mutilations, the human mutilations. But I'm wondering, with mental health professionals and scientists basically saying that it's a mental health problem or people are just deceiving to try and make themselves famous, do you think that type of talk is actually keeping a lot of people from actually reporting things that may have happened to them?
Well, yeah, the giggle factor, I mean, it happens all the time where, people come forward with something they saw or didn't understand and they want an answer or, they need some direction. And then, you get some wise guy that says, well, you really need some help. And, it's, you can't do that. I mean, you can't do that. I mean, in other words, you're looking at somebody who came to you with a report and they had a loss of time or, a lot of these people come back with theophany, which is oneness with the world and the universe and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then some mental health expert or a scientist says, like, well, number one, it's deception, or you have a proneness to fantasy, or you got false memory syndrome, or you got a personality disorder, or you got a sleep phenomenon, or, it's environmental factors. You might be sleeping too close to a high tension wire. I mean, they come up with all kind of excuses. But these people that come forward, they believe what happened, whether it happened to them yesterday or it happened to them 50 years ago. Right. Or it was a thing that went through the whole family. The whole family, never discussed it, but as one brought it forward, and then the others started, getting a memory of what took place. And but mental health, and I don't know, or they want to the first thing they want to do is put you under hypnosis. Well, of what? Yeah. They're going to implant the information into your head. And then you're going to sit there or lay there and go like, yeah. That was it.
Well, I know one of the. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, these people all suffer from the same scenario during an abduction. Right. I mean, it's never changed. That they have a capture. There's a loss of time, an examination, their return. They have a conference. They have a tour of the craft, and the aftermath they put up with for the rest of their lives.
Right. Well, I know I've often wondered whether we're missing a lot because people don't want to come forward. One of the things that I always get a kick out of the movie Independence Day. There's a scene where and I can't remember the actor's name. The one who he's a pilot. And they're asking him, what is your ability as being a pilot? He tells them, and then he says, and on a personal note, I just want to say that ever since I was abducted by, and they're about to go up against aliens, and everybody looks at him like he's nuts.
Yeah.
And it's just one of the things that I thought was rather amusing. And then I think that's what really got me thinking, well, I wonder how many people are not telling their story because of that stigma. And it's really kind of sad of the things we may be missing.
Yeah. Well,
but can you? When was the first abduction? Do you know?
No, I have no idea. I'm sure it was probably that far back. Probably that far back, nobody documented it anyway.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about government cover-ups and possibly even, the government taking people out to keep them quiet and things like that. I wanted to ask you, I had heard about a cover-up involving President Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, making sure that no information whatsoever about human mutilations would ever get out. I mean, obviously, I don't think it worked too well. But are you familiar with that so-called cover-up?
No, I've heard of it before, but it was a long time ago.
Right.
And there are a group of researchers in England that study human mutilations.
Mm-hmm.
So. I mean, and they've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah. I just, when I was reading about that, I was kind of thinking to myself, well, it didn't seem to work real well because it was like right around the 80s when that cover-up would have been instituted that a lot of stuff started coming out, especially about the human mutilations. So, have you ever investigated personally a human mutilation case?
No, they've never had one in Pennsylvania, no. Or cattle mutilation here in Pennsylvania.
Really? So there's never been a cattle mutilation in Pennsylvania?
Nope.
Huh. Oh, that seems kind of interesting to me. But then again, I guess they kind of isolated. Because, I mean, Pennsylvania is rather populated, correct? So maybe it's one of those things where they try and, stay out of the heavily populated areas to, afraid to be seen.
Well, most of those reports, they're in the Four Corners They started in the 50s, actually, in the Four Corners, which is Utah, Arizona, that area.
So, a quick question before we have to end this is, one of the first cases to receive widespread attention occurred in 1961 with Barney and Betty Hill. And
abduction, yeah.
I guess, and I guess they were the ones who coined the phrase gray.
Yes.
Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Well, it was Barney actually that described the creature. And when he was under hypnosis, they were asking for the description. And he was giving the description, the head, the eyes, the dark eyes, almond eyes, long limbs, skinny, pretty much undernourished looking. And when they said color, he said, well, they were gray. So that stuck. Now, there have been reports, and there have been reports of other colors over the years. I mean, blue, gray, dark green, light green. I mean, there's been different colors. So, but as far as Barney was the one that coined the phrase grays.
How many different types of aliens are there?
Well, if you really research hard, you'll probably come up with maybe 5, 6. But if you go on the internet, there's, I think the last count was 56 different types. But when you look at the photograph, or the drawings, I shouldn't say photographs, when you look at the drawings, they're all variations of, you got a small gray, and then you got a medium-sized gray, then you got a large gray, then you got a large gray, and then it goes to a reptilian, smaller reptilian, middle-sized reptilian, you know what I mean? It's just a progression.
Right.
But again, show me a picture.
Yeah.
I mean, I get stories and reports all the time, and some stuff they have good evidence, but I get a lot more that are just really good stories.
Have there been any pictures
of aliens?
Yes.
None. 0.
So, and I mean, it seems obvious to me that the ones from Roswell were kind of made up, but I'm wondering, did they use Barney Hill's description to kind of create the fantasy of the alien corpses?
Yes, could be.
Yeah. Huh.
The story on Roswell changes on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I've kind of noticed that it has definitely changed over the years.
I got 12 books in my library on Roswell. There's 12 books in my library on Roswell. Which one do you want me to believe? They're all different.
I take it. I was going to say, I take it they're all different.
Yep. Every one of them.
All right. So we're going to have to wrap this up. But just really quick, what's next for you, Butch?
Well, I'm getting together a small expedition to go check on these bipedal canines in a couple areas of state. We're going to try some areas that have a lot of caves in the area that we'd like to look at.
Is it weird that I think that sounds like fun?
No, sounds like fun to me.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to have to wrap this up, but Butch, I just wanted to say thank you. This was one of the most fascinating shows we've done so far, and I just want to say thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge with us.
It's been a pleasure.
I would like to invite you back. I will get with you so I can schedule when you're available.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think we got through half the questions, so we can continue. It's definitely. Again, thank you so much. Folks, go ahead.
I was just going to say you're quite welcome.
So, folks, just join us next week when we welcome Marie D. Jones to the show to discuss Earth and Druid magic, voodoo, and modern witchcraft. So until then, be safe, stay healthy, and we will talk to you next week.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.